Hi, this is Jeff Harmon with Brilliance Within Coaching and our podcast, Conversations That Life Science Leaders Aren't Having. Welcome back to our next episode. You're in for a real treat today. Our guest today is Hong Tang of OnQuality Pharmaceuticals. OnQuality is doing amazing work in developing innovative drugs and drug delivery systems that improve the quality of life of oncology patients. Hong is the co-founder, president, and chief medical officer at OnQuality. She's a board-certified physician with more than 15 years of experience in both drug development and medical affairs, and she's been a part of all phases of clinical trials. We don't get into the industry here in this conversation. We get into Hong's heart and what really drives her. So I invite you to sit back, enjoy this conversation as we dive into conversations that life science leaders aren't having with Hong Tang. So Hong, again, welcome. And we just heard a short introduction of your profile and what you're up to in the world. And what I'd love to start with in our conversation is to hear a little something in your story that has shaped you that we wouldn't necessarily be able to find on your LinkedIn profile or in a Google search.
Sure. Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation. And the first thing that came to my mind is related to people couldn't find from my LinkedIn profile is the bungee jumping I did when I was a graduate student in University of Texas Health Science Center in San Antonio. It was a very unique experience, exciting, and same time very scary. So, but I remember that as if just happened yesterday. It is one of the most adventurous things I did in my life.
Oh, wow. So that brings up loads of questions. Is what brought you to the point of making that decision to do that?
Yeah, I remember I was in China. I watched it on the TV, see people doing that. At that time, wasn't available in China. I thought, wow, one day if I go to US, I would love to do that. Then, my classmate in the PhD program said, hey, let's go to do bungee jumping. I said, wow, that's great. So I just went along and, obviously my program director was so surprised. He's like, oh, you did that? I couldn't believe it. So
what I've heard stories of people who have taken that. That's a pretty significant thing to do. And I've heard from others that that's had an impact on their life.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what have you noticed, or what did you notice as an impact of making that type of courageous decision?
Yeah, I think it's maybe showed a little bit of adventurous side of me. I think in life, you sometimes have to take the risk, right? Even with career development, sometimes you need to take a risk. Obviously you have to deal with the consequence, right? Like when I went up to the bungee platform, I was like, no, I cannot do it. Could you push me? They said, no, we couldn't push you. You had to jump yourself. It's like, oh my gosh, I don't have a choice. So, obviously during the free fall time, it is very scary, right? But, you accept that consequence. And in life, you had to learn to deal with it. And I think that speaks to not just the adventure itself. It's in career development, it's the same thing.
Did that experience and this feeling of taking a risk, being in your adventurous spirit, where have you seen that show up in your leadership over the years since that time?
Yeah, I think working on quality is one of the example, right? Because most of my career was in US. So, and suddenly taking a job of working with Chinese colleagues and have a field, it's underappreciated in supportive care or supportive therapy. So that's a risk-taking behavior, right? But the reason I did it is because there is a need. I think if there is a need, then there is a need. So I just need to get into that. So yeah, so that's would be one example. Is you take a measured risk, right? It's like what I could maximum is okay. I already learned so much in my life. I think to take on a risk like that, it's not a big deal.
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can imagine after jumping off a platform so many feet, so far up, I'm scared of heights. So I can imagine if I were to do that, it would make everything else in my life seem small in terms of courage and risk.
Yeah,
Wow,
I'm
that's
scared of heights too. Actually, even to this day, I'm still scared of heights. But for that moment, I guess you just deal with the fear and do it anyway. Yeah.
wow, that is such a powerful principle. Feel
Mm-hmm.
the fear and do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of, I would love to ask you, just in the context of the conversations that life science leaders aren't having, feel the fear and do it anyway. What's the, I know you have a passion for giving back. What's
Mm-hmm.
the advice for young leaders or up
Mm-hmm.
and coming leaders around fear? What
Mm-hmm.
what's the conversation that you'd love to have around fear?
Yeah, I think fear is afraid of failure, right? So I think to analyze the situation very rationally and then look at it, what's the worst case scenario would be? Would that destroy your life or not, right? So that once you analyze that, then you say, oh, those risks is not that big a deal. The maximum is this is not going to be successful. But what I could learn during this process might be more important, right? So often you say, well, if this program is not going to be successful, maybe I shouldn't do it. Well, the question is what you can learn from that, right? If you can learn from that, then most likely you adapt, you will figure a way out. So I think often I advise young people is look at what do you learn through this process, right? So we shouldn't be risk averse. Take a measure the risk. It's important, but what's the gain if you become successful? Would that make an impact to patients, right? If patients have a tremendous need in that field, it is worthwhile to risk to a certain degree.
I know from my own story, and I've done a lot of work with coaches and counselors, that there was a time when failure felt like death.
Mm-hmm.
Failure did not, there was not a relationship between failure and learning,
Mm-hmm.
failure and growth. It
Mm-hmm.
was avoid failure at all costs. And I would imagine that that's a common feeling that lots of people, whether they be in life science or not,
Yeah.
have. What was it that allowed you to move past that relationship, that
Yeah.
failure is death, that as I said, many people have? What enabled you to move past that?
Yeah, I think always a strong family support is important, right? You always, whenever you take a risk, you have to think about what's the impact, not only to yourself, also to your family. I moved through different pharmaceutical company quite a few times, right? Every time we had to move the whole family to a different location, right? So to get them on board, it's very, very important. Obviously kids, when they were younger, they don't like to move, right? You had to deal with that consequence too. And I always look at the big picture. Is what's the gain, the positive outcome out of this versus what's the negative, and whether the positive outweigh the negative, right? Obviously, sometimes people say, well, what if this is not working out? Let's just say, for example, if you take on a new job, what if not working out, right? It could happen, right? Sometimes it's just for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But then you look at it and say, would that be a big deal or not, right? What does that mean? So you're never going to find another job? Or, maybe in reality, you most likely will find another job, right? If you have been doing a good job in your past career, your colleagues can and provide reference for you, likely you will be okay. So usually you have to do those kind of back and forth conversation with yourself and your family.
It sounds like to me, as I'm listening to you, some of your values are really coming out. This value that maybe you didn't realize you had of adventure, this
Mm-hmm.
value of family,
Mm-hmm.
the value of impact, of
Yeah.
influencing others.
Yeah.
Are those some of your values?
Oh, very important because often people ask me, say, "Oh, how what do you think I'm, being interviewed for this job, but I have this concern. What should I do?" Right. So my advice always is, "What are you going to gain out of this job?" Right. But how about your family? What is their opinion? Because you don't want to have a divorce just because you have a new job, right? So I always ask, it's that you always need to balance the two. Obvious job is important, but your family may be even more important, and you had to bring in the whole family along the way. And the moving up the career ladder is important, but more important, you want to make sure your family is on board.
Yeah. Has there been a moment that stands out to you where your values have been tested?
Mm-hmm.
Where a mentor of mine says values aren't really your values until they're
Mm-hmm.
tested.
Yeah.
Where in your journey have your values really been tested to see are they really your values?
Yeah. Well, I think the moment is sometimes you question that, right? For example, one time I moved to Estella City from New Jersey to Chicago area. And so that time, and obviously it's a career step up. It's a bigger responsibility. Sometimes, at the same time, closer to my mother-in-law. But my husband challenged me, said, "Is that really for my mother, or is it because for your career?" So
Mm.
I thought very hard about it. Is this true? Just a convenient excuse, right? Just because I want to have a career, step up and move my whole family from New Jersey to, Illinois. So is that true? Is it because I care about my mother-in-law, or it's because I care about my career, right? I think we have to challenge ourselves. I give very careful thought about it, and I talked with my husband, said, what if we could accomplish both? Not either or all, right? Cannot be, you say, "Oh, yeah, it's all for yourself. It's about your career. Who cares about your mother-in-law?" But maybe we could accomplish both. And we did. And my mother-in-law, actually moved in with us. In our, Illinois house for a while because of her Alzheimer. So, you could accomplish both, right? Why not? If you can accomplish both family and your career. So I think, but we do want to be careful, not use it as a reason, but at the same time, just for selfish gain, right? So we have to challenge our notion whether that's a true reason or it's just an excuse.
Yeah, and I love what I'm hearing you say is your values are your compass,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not black and white where
Yeah.
it's binary, yes or no. It matches your values, it honors your values, or it doesn't. what i'm
Yeah.
what i'm hearing is a lot of discernment to really look at your values, and to be able to, as your husband proposed, is what if it's not a either or but rather a both and, where you can honor your values
Mm-hmm.
and pursue opportunity.
Yeah.
So I really love that perspective,
Yeah.
because so many times we think it's a yes or a no, or it's a binary decision, but you're really showing us the ability to discern and still hold true to what's important to you. That's
Yeah, I
really
think sometimes we put the work and the personal life into an opposite position. I like the word harmonization. We want to work life harmonized, right? We don't
mm,
want to say, "Oh, we need to balance it because either or all," right? We want to harmonize it. So we could be both, right? You could do both, in a reasonable way. So yeah, I think how to harmonize the work and life, and it's important.
mm. I have to tell you, I love that word, because
Mm-hmm.
I dislike work life balance, and I even dislike work life integration.
Yeah.
I love the term work-life harmonization.
Yeah.
Not just because my last name is Harmon, but but I love that term. So I am absolutely going to use that
Yeah.
with my clients and with
You know,
myself. So thank you for
very
that
true.
gift.
During pandemic, right, we work at home, right? This is especially true. I could be 1 hour on a video conference, another hour I could be working in the yard or exercise or cooking, right? But how to seamlessly transition between work and personal life becomes so important during pandemic time, and we learn to do that, right? So your kids could observe you working and doing housework, so that's okay. So, in some way, we become more efficient because we don't spend a lot of time traveling
Yeah,
and to the office, right, to fight the traffic jam. So I think to a certain degree, it's quite efficient.
yeah, I love it.
Mhm.
What have you come to believe in your life and in your
Mhm.
leadership that maybe it isn't a commonly held thought or belief? The sentence is most people think blank, but the
Mhm.
truth is
Mhm.
blank. What are those truths? What are those ideas that you've come to believe in your life that maybe not everybody sees it that way?
Yeah. Well, obviously we're all being taught to working hard, right? So we believe working hard will make you successful. That is true to a certain degree, but not all the truth. The reason that's what I learned, right? I'm a very hardworking person. However, I realized working in a pharmaceutical company, you need to be people smart as well. You need to learn to work collaborate with other people. Nobody knows everything from preclinical to clinical to approval of our drug, right? So we had to work with different experts in different field and learn to work as a team. So how, no matter how smart you are, you had to, recognize other people's expertise in their field. So that's what I learned is not just working hard, but you need to work smart and be people smart. Obviously, you need to, adapt, be flexible and have perseverance, right? But I think that's one of the biggest lesson learned is be people smart.
And what is so a lot of times these things are
Mm-hmm.
opposites in some
Yeah.
ways.
Mm-hmm.
What's this? Most people think, well, you have to work hard, and what I'm
Mm-hmm.
hearing you describe is, but the truth is you really have to be not just smart but people smart.
Yeah.
What's the difference between those two thought processes, working hard and working people smart?
Yeah, once in a while I notice somebody who working extremely hard, right? But they're very strong, opinionated, right? Disrespect other people. It's almost become almost impossible, or maybe a toxic environment to work with that person. So that make it very hard to move forward, in doing certain things, right? So often I had to coach people is like a very important. I know you're doing a lot of work, you provide value in your, project. However, you had to learn to work with other people. You had to respect other people, be humble, right? Maybe, just recognize other people have some points as well, not just dismiss it, right? I think that's become so important. Yeah, I could work hard. I could spend many hours to find the rationale why I am important, I am right, you are wrong. That's not good though, because if we constantly prove other people is wrong, I am right. Nobody want to work with me, right? So that's what I recognize in pharmaceutical. Collaboration is so important. It's because we often work as a team, right? So working hard, it's important, but at the same time, if you work hard at the same time, willing to collaborate, then that would be a win-win situation.
I have a feeling you have some battle scars
Yeah.
from your work life that or your life in general that
Mm-hmm.
has brought you to that insight of
Mm-hmm.
of people smart. What are some of the scars that have led you to be committed to this way of operating?
Yeah, because I deal with this, some, in pharmaceutical, we have a lot of doctors, right? Could be, doctor of philosophy, doctor of medicine, right? They're all smart for sure. They're all smart. They all worked hard to come to this stage, right? And so to emphasize how to be able to collaborate with other people becomes so critical. And obviously, we all have tremendous respect for people who achieved a doctor's degree, right? But, in the company, majority of them, especially the people I work in medical, majority of them are doctors, right? So it's not like you are smarter than other people. No, we all are smart. So I had to learn to work with people. So yes, that might be the reason I'm emphasizing that is because we all come to the pharmaceutical company with a tremendous education background, right? We had to learn to respect other people.
Hmm. So, in a world where everyone is at the top of their game in terms of
Yeah,
their
yeah.
education and their experience, they've reached that point because they they are some of the smartest people in the world.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm hearing you describe is that what really sets them one or the other apart is their ability to connect with others,
Yeah.
to be humble,
Mm-hmm.
to respect others' opinions, to not need to know all the answers. Is
Yeah.
that a key differentiator for you?
Yeah, I think as I learned to be humble over my life, when I was younger, I might be more arrogant, but through my life, I realized that, wow, everybody is so smart, right? So that you learn is that I need to learn from those smart people, right? I'm no longer the smartest person. So, but, as long as you respect them, usually you will be okay to work with them. In my life, I have direct reports from, Ivy Leagues and maybe doctors, right? But I still able to work with them very nicely just because I respect them, right? I respect them, they respect me. We work, we always carefully listen to their opinion and take it, into a bigger picture consideration, and go from there.
So, as a leader of some of the smartest people in the world,
Mm-hmm.
how are you finding this time of where the labor market, especially in life science, is very tight? How
Mm-hmm.
are you seeing that you need to show up as leader of these extremely smart people to keep them engaged, to keep them in the employment of on quality,
Mm-hmm.
um, that they want to work for you? What are you seeing in this atmosphere, this landscape, this work landscape is required when you're leading some of the smartest people in the world?
Yeah, what I do is I don't look at ahead of them or on top of them. I'm more like a servant in a way, right? So it means I often assign clear roles and responsibility so they have projects they can focus on. And we set up a metric so we empower them to do things. If they encounter issue, I'm here to help, right? So I help to resolve the issue. If there is a people issue, I'm here. I'm here to give some advice. But my main role is to help them, facilitate them to accomplish their task, their job. So this way, it's a little bit different, right? It's not like, oh, okay, you need to do this. I'm not a micromanager. I'm more a person. I give this project, you're in charge. Tell me what you need from me. We have one-on-ones on a regular basis, to see anything I can do to help. And obviously, we have metrics to make sure the things are progress and according to the plan. But yeah, I think I'm very fortunate to have direct reports I worked with in previous work and can work for me. And so, or I worked for my previous colleagues in the past as well, just because of that good connection, good relationship. People know each other, trust each other. So I'm very fortunate, to have people like that. In my leadership, we have very low turnover rate. And I mean, in oncology so far, my team being very stable, nobody left, knock on the wood. So, but yeah, so again, we want to provide a very friendly environment, right? We genuinely care that person as a whole, not just about work, we care about their personal life as well.
Yeah, I love your use of the term servant. Servant leadership is often misunderstood. How do you help one that you're mentoring? What's the path that you help them to be able to see their way to servant leadership, to be not to be a leader who is lording over others, but to, as you described it, to be a servant? How do you help emerging leaders to take on the mindset of a servant?
Yeah, obviously example is important. You want to behave that way, right? At the same time, you advise them to do the same way. So as leaders, we should set a good example. We hold ourselves with high standards. My philosophy is if my direct report made a mistake, I need to take the responsibility. I'm not going to blame them, right? Because I should know, I should give the right advice, right? If a mistake is made, I need to figure out a way, what I did wrong. So this way they feel they can trust you, right? So, we as leaders, we don't want to just take the credit. we want to take the blame as well, right? So because we should know. If something happened you didn't know, then there may be something wrong. Maybe we should know. So yeah, I think you set a good example. It's very important.
Yeah. In my experience of teaching and coaching others to around servant leadership is often seen as a big risk. We've talked about risk before in the conversation. For them, it feels like a big risk. Because especially in those early years of emerging into leadership roles, there is the feeling, I need to have the answers. I need to be the smartest person in the room. And so it's really I'd say it really comes down to their heart, helping them to see a different way. And so in addition to you modeling the way, in this way of being a servant, how do you help them break through the taking the risk to show up and be a servant leader?
Yeah, I think, sometimes just give it a try, right? What you can lose, right? You give it a try. Just say, hey, I'm not going to order. Just if somebody have an idea, you say, what's the problem if I let that person carry out that idea? If the whole team thinks that's a correct way, even though you are the only person not thinking that way, right? Could you just say, hey, what's the big risk to let it try, right? I mean, once in a while, I have people have an idea come out the other way, but it's no big deal. We learn from it, right? So obviously, we need to analyze the risk. If the risk is too big, maybe you need to be more conservative. But if the risk is small, why not? Just give it a try. Because I have people say, oh, no, I cannot do that. What if this? I say, okay, what's the big deal? If, let's say, the worst case scenario, what would happen? Let's find that, talk about that, figure out the fear, right?
Yeah, it's funny that we would, because servant leadership, if I was to use a word, is to be nice, to be kind. And it's almost funny sometimes to think, I love the way you put it, like, give being nice a try.
Yeah, I have an example about be nice. So we said share credits, right? Share credits with other people. We have people, they are very ambitious, they want to take all the credit. I said, what if we share the credit? Oh no, I cannot do that, because then people think I didn't do the work, the other person did the work. I say, why don't you give it a try? See, just give it one try first, and let's see what will happen. Well, obviously, the other person being recognized came to thank me, say, wow, the other person was amazing, right? So I gave that feedback to that person. See, I said, that's the outcome when you give credit to other people, because other people suddenly feel you are such a nice person to collaborate, right? Instead of saying, oh, she's just so ambitious, she want to step on other people's shoulder to climb up, right? So why not share the credit? If somebody even contribute 10%, you still can recognize that person. because over time people would be willing to work with you. They wouldn't badmouth you. You're just step on other people's shoulders, right? So sometimes give it a try and to find out what's the outcome would be.
Yeah, I love I can imagine in a scientific world, like to test it, experiment with it, give it a try, that type of language even would resonate for that type of individual who is looking for an empirical result or some evidence to say, that's worth it.
Yeah. I mean, if you do that over time, people are willing to work with you, then you become a natural leader, even though you may not have the title. You become a natural leader, right? Because the people say, wow, if I work with this person, we always get nice outcome. We always being recognized. Then you become a leader. So I remember I took a workshop called Leading Without the Title, right? So you just leading in your whatever your position, because over time people realize that you are the expert and you are a nice person to work with. You become a natural leader.
Yeah, so we're getting this really beautiful profile of you, Hong: adventurer, family, investing in others, servant. I think that would definitely be a word. What's another value of yours that you hold near and dear to your heart for how you live and how you lead?
Yeah, I think what maybe this is a branch to what I learned, right? So when I was young, I feel I often been impatient. Impatient means I have certain career goals I want to achieve, right? So sometimes there's an opportunity, I want to grab it. But, looking back, it's, actually focus on building up broadening your experience and learning new things. And those experiences will follow you for the rest of the life, right? If you miss one opportunity, no big deal, because there will be plenty other opportunities out there, right? So be patient. As young people, often they very ambitious, anxious, right? I think be patient is very important. We mentioned a little bit earlier about be humble, right? Be humble. Always there are people smarter than you in certain area, at least. So we need to recognize that. We need have the willingness to listen to other people's opinion and to work with them. And give other people's credit.
Yeah, it really speaks to your ability to have a long view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and my sense, Hong, and I'm wondering if this is true, that it just brings a more relaxed way of showing up and a more relaxed way of life. So, and I can speak for myself in my leadership journey. I spent much of that time very tense. That I'll make a mistake or I'll miss an opportunity and an opportunity will never come my way. And so I just sense from you, there's a relaxed way of you take your work very seriously, but you don't take it too seriously. Like there's a relaxed way about you. Is that is that how you would describe yourself?
Mm-hmm. They relax. Often people say, "Yo, Hong, you look so calm," right? When even under tremendous stress, not like I'm not stressed, but often I have this self-dialogue is what's the worst case it could be, right? Then once I know what's the worst case could be and how I'm going to deal with it, then I feel more relaxed, right? So, and the other thing I learned in my life is when something really bad happened, let's say if I've been laid off, just for example, now I heard the next month I will be, laid off, right? And what I learned, in the past, I just vent, I came home and vent. This is unfair, right? Then I didn't realize I put a tremendous stress on my family because suddenly they become very moody, upset. Then I was like, wow, I should get some support from you guys, right? Now you guys, act like you're more upset than me. So I have no place to vent. So what I realized is you had to care about their well-being. So, in my advice, I have people who, have some things very bad happening in their career. I said, I know you're very upset, right? But at the same time, you want to be careful what pressure you put on your family, because that, Suddenly you start to have family chaos, right? So what I learned the second time around when I have something happen, I first tell my family is it's okay. Even given this situation, it's okay because here's my plan. This is what I'm going to do. So if I set that background, then suddenly they become more supportive because they don't have fear anymore, right? Because I said the worst case scenario, this is my plan. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do. Then suddenly they become more supportive instead of they get upset. So that's a very important lesson I learned. Is most of the time people overwhelmed with their own feeling. They have no idea what that impact to the people around them.
And I would imagine that is a principle that applies to, yes, your family, as you said, but also your team. When crisis
Exactly.
happens,
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
things get turned upside down, that as the leader goes, so goes the team. Whether that team
Exactly.
being a family or a team at work, that it sounds like that is probably a principle that you that applies for you in all those areas.
Yeah, right. I think you're very good in expanding to work, right? What is the silver line of something happened? Something really bad happened. What do we learn from this? How could we avoid this in the future, right? Look at the positive side, and we only can learn through negative experience, right? If things work out, sometimes we don't know why it just worked out, or is it by chance, or just because we planned it well, right? But if something negative happened, we could do all kinds of analysis, say what do we learn from this, how we could avoid it, right? So and take it in a very calm way, in a rational way, not just blow up, right? Yeah, so that definitely is very applicable to work as well. And as leaders, my CEO, Mike McCullough, I admire him because he always finds some positives out of even very negative situation. That just amazes me that how he could bring that positive energy to work.
Yeah, I'm sure we could talk about much of this and even more about your philosophy. And I'm curious, given where you are today,
Yeah.
if you could go back 15, 20 years as you
Yeah.
were an emerging leader, knowing
Yeah.
what you know today,
Yeah.
Hong, what
Yeah.
advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, I think I mentioned a little bit earlier, be patient, right? However, I think seek advice, seek executive coaching, either through friends, family, or really professional coaching is very important because sometimes we just couldn't see from a different perspective, right? Once somebody advises you, suddenly say, "Oh, I never look at it that way," right? For example, I was fortunate when I was working in Bristol Myers Squibb. I had an executive coach, so I would just then you feel more relaxed because somebody outside the company, right? You could share your struggle, let's say with coworkers. So I think she amazes me that she always helped me look at it from different perspective. Instead of saying, "Oh, I'm upset this person gave me a hard time," she more like, look at this problem, how this would impact your work or your team's work or the achieving the company goals. Once you analyze that way, then suddenly you look at things from a different view, right? It's not about my personal feeling anymore. It's how this impact our work. So this it would also related to conflict resolution, right? And the ultimate goal, we want to resolve the issue. We want to achieve a win-win situation, not a win-lose situation, or worse, a lose-lose situation, right? If I win, I prove that person wrong. That's not a good situation over time, right? So if it's not something of principle, you just need to work it out to resolve it. You want to solve the problem, tell people, the rest of the team, hey, we resolved our issue. We could move forward. Everybody's happy, right? So I think to achieve the win-win solution is more important than prove, I'm right, other person is wrong. And so I think look at it from a different perspective, not, maybe step outside of your personal feeling.
I love that. And not just because I'm a coach, but because I have personally benefited from the type of support and the different perspective that you're talking about. So I could say for myself, if I was still in the industry, I would want to work for you, Hong.
I really appreciate. I would want to work with you because I definitely sometimes feel like I need a executive coach. Yeah.
Anytime.
Yeah.
So we're at the end of our time together. If people want to learn more about you and what you're up to in the world, where can they find out more information?
Actually, I volunteered as a coach or mentor through LinkedIn. So once in a while, I get a recommendation from LinkedIn, say, oh, so and so I asked this question. Could you give some advice? So the reason I said, I want to give back, right? So I participated in LinkedIn initiative for coaching other people. So yeah, I do get so if somebody want to ask me a question, they could use LinkedIn, the mentoring project. So I always try to answer the question.
That's great. Well, we'll put in the show notes, we'll put your LinkedIn profile link. We'll also put the website for OnQuality if they want to learn more about what you're up to in the world. Hong, it has been a pleasure to spend these few minutes together. Such wisdom and grace, and your team is very lucky to have you as their boss and as their leader.
I'm very lucky to have a wonderful team. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you.
Thanks so much, Hong.